be screwed, feel my own adrenaline. Yeah, I do just what I do, and I hope you let me in, yeah.
Hello and welcome back, fellow anime lovers, to Cypherfics. I am delighted to have you join us once again in the world of fanfiction and fantasy. This is the fourth part of, What If Ichigo Enters Game of Thrones? Special note, this fanfic is written and a masterpiece of Magi tale Welkin on FANFICTIONnet. Do check and support the author too. Now smash the like, share and subscribe button for more. Also press the bell icon so that you never miss such great parts. Thanks for the introduction. Now let's dive into the world. Septa Mordain brought Sansa into the throne room, called the Great Hall. Someday your brother-in-law will sit there, she said as they approached the jagged and sharp iron throne, and one day before too long you will present your son to the court. All the lords of Westeros will gather here to see the little prince. What if I have a girl? Gods be good, you'll have boys and girls and plenty of them. What if I have only girls? I wouldn't worry about that. Jane Poole's mother had 5 children, all of them girls. Yes, but it's highly unlikely. But what if? Then, said a voice she loved. Both women turned round as Asher with both Gatsby and Sora walked in as the prince continued, we go on Japanese and Dornish tradition, something Lord Ichigo plans to do with his future children. He put his hands to Sansa's cheek, the husband of our daughter will marry into our family, he will take the name Baratheon, not our daughter taking the name of House Manning or Karen or Marbrand or whatever other house you can think of. We are the royal family, House Baratheon of King's Landing, and we will not marry into another house, the other houses will marry into us. He kissed her on the forehead, forgive me for leaving my dear, but I'm needed in the small council. Sansa watched him go, quite out of touch, so Septa Mordain decided to bring her out of the trance. Can we go over your lessons? The young lady turned to her tutor. Who built the Iron Throne? Aegon the Conqueror. And who built the Red Keep? Maegor the Cruel. And how many years did it take to build? My grandfather and uncle were murdered here, weren't they? The Septa looked away. They were killed under the orders of King Ares, yes. The Mad King. Commonly known as the Mad King. Why were they killed? You should speak to your father about such matters. I want to leave. The Septa nodded and the future princess walked away back to her room in the Tower of the Hand. She took one last glance back at the room and bit her lip, I hope I don't have to come here often. She passed Arya at the top of the stairs. She moved her feet and arms slowly in a precession of moves, Nymeria watching at the foot. What are you doing, Arya? Practicing for my art lessons. Arya, art lesson? What kind of art could Horseface make? She shook her head and inside. Lady run up to her, so she rubbed her. She growled happy. Then Sansa noticed something new in the room. A fur rug. It looked like deer pelt and very large, large enough for a full-sized dire wolf. Lady barked and ran to it, smiling it happily. Sanaa noticed a letter on the desk. She opened it and read it. My dear Sansa, forgiven for not giving you this in person, but you were not here and I am needed at the small council. This bed is for Lady, made with the pelt of the deer Gatsby killed by himself. I hope she likes it. She smiled. That takes care of that problem, doesn't it, Lady? Her dire wolf barked happily. Sansa grinned, but now she didn't know how to pass the time, so she went to her default and started sewing, working on something Asher suggested. After a little while a knock came at the door. Yes. Her father walked in. Arya said you were here, just checking you're all right. Her expression changed and she put down her sewing. Actually, father, can I ask you something? Of course, what is it? Septa Mordain took me to see the Iron Throne, but in the throne room I wondered about grandfather Ricard and Uncle Brandon. She looked up. Why did the Mad King kill them? Her father sighed and gestured for her to move. She sat on the bed so her father could sit on the chair. As you know, the Crown Prince Rhaegar Targaryen took your Aunt Lyanna. She nodded. Your Uncle Brandon became enraged and rode here to King's Landing to demand her return. and maybe in a fit of rage demand Rhaegar's death, Aerys arrested him for treason. I can see why, demanding the crown prince's death. He was never one for good decisions. The king called your grandfather down the capital for ransom, he complied, but the mad king arrested him for treason too. Why? He did nothing wrong. Apparently Lord Varys told him to treat us Starks with caution, which made him paranoid. When the mad king got paranoid, bad things happened. He sighed. Father demanded a trial by combat, and the king agreed, choosing fire as the champion of House Targaryen. He was burned alive in his armor, for my brother a LTHR cord was wrapped round his neck and a long sword placed just out of his reach. The cord tightened the further he reached. He was strangled trying to save father. Sansa shed tears and Lady rubbed herself on her MSTRS's leg, and then the mad king ordered yours and King Robert's arrest and death. Yes, and he started a rebellion, all because his son took my sister and arrested my brother. Joffrey seems to be turning into a madman himself. He's bad-tempered, cowardly, arrogant and violent. You shouldn't let the queen hear you say that. It's the truth. He nearly killed my betrothed, almost killed the butcher's boy and Arya. Asher is his twin. Why did the gods make Joffrey the first to be born? Don't know, but you should get yourself ready. There's tourney being held for me as Hand of the King. What about you? I'm not going to it. It may be in my name but it's the king's. Asher agrees with me, but he's still going, so show you. Sansa sat near the royal stand, however she sat at the low end of the stands, the best seats where she could see the full action. Next to her sat Arya, Bran and Septa Mordane. Lady rested at her feet turned to face the royal stand, she looked to it. Asher sat next to his twin, both looking away from each other. His pets, Gatsby sat at his feet looking down at Lady and Sora on a stand to his left, his head darting around the field. Asher caught her eyes and smiled. She smiled back, however he looked up and his face darkened. The sound of footstep approached her and she looked around to find a mustached man about 5 years younger than her father. He grinned. A little wrong that your betrothed doesn't sit with you or you sit with him. I sorry do I know. Lady turned her head round and started growling. Septa Mordane spoke up. Sansa dear, this is Lord Baelish. He's an old friend of the family. He sat down next to her while Lady still growled. I've known your mother for a long, long time. Sansa smiled, however Asher's wearing back in Winterfell returned to her head. She would not trust him. Arya leaned over and asked, why do they call you Littlefinger? Arya. Sansa said, turning to her sister, and the Septa added, don't be rude. No, Baelish said, it's quite all right. When I was a child I was very small, and I come from a small spit of land called the Fingers, so see, he chuckled, it's an exceedingly clever nickname. Just then the king got up. I've been sitting here for days, he bellowed, start the DMN joust before I PSS myself. The queen got up and walked away while Asher rolled his eyes and held the bridge of his noise. From one end of the field rode in a massive armored man on a large pure black stallion. Sansa saw him. Gods, who's that? Ser Gregor Clegane, Baelish announced. They call him the Mountain. Said Mountain opened the flap of his helmet and bowed to the king as the MSTR of Coin continued. The Hound's older brother. And his opponent? Ser Hugh of the Vale. He was Jon Arryn's squire. Look how far he's come. She looked from Ser Hugh to Asher. His eyebrows frowned as his eyes focused on the newer Knights Amor. Yes, said the king, yes, enough of the bloody pomp, have at him. With that the two knights rode to the ends of the field as the trumpet sounded. They took their lances and shields, Ser Gregor with the 3 black dogs on a yellow field and Ser Hugh's, the sigil of House Arryn, a sky-blue falcon soaring against a white moon on a similarly sky-blue field, representing the legendary falcon that carried Ser Ardes Arryn over the mountains of the moon in order to defeat the Griffin King and win the throne of the Mountain and Vale. With little warning both knights charged fast at each other. Ser Hugh struggled with his lance as they neared each other. Ser Gregor twisted to hit the Arryn shield but missed, so they did another go round. Ser Hugh started fast and Ser Gregor quickly match. The Mountain's lance struck the Ser Hugh's shoulder. It shattered. Sansa screamed. Ser Hugh fell off his horse. The crowd went silent. Part of the lance embedded itself in Ser Hugh's neck. The Vale Knight's helmet did not protect his neck, thus lead to the man's slow and bloody death. The Stark saw it all. Lady Huld followed by Gatsby. Some men came and pulled the now late Ser Hugh of the Vale of the field. Baelish leaned into Sansa. Not what you were expecting. Sansa shook her head before turning to look at Asher. The prince gritted his teeth, his hand in fist as he watched Ser Gregor getting ready for the next joust. Sansa looked confused. Is Asher angry the mountain killing Ser Hugh, or is there more to this? She also noticed the hound looking at his brother with contempt. Lord Baelish began to speak again. Has anyone ever told you the story of the mountain and the hound? She looked back and shook her head. Baelish grinned. Lovely little tale of brotherly love. The hound was just a pup, 6 years old maybe, Gregor a few years older, already a big lad, already getting a bit of a reputation, some lucky boy just born with a talent for violence. One evening, Gregor found his little brother playing with a toy by the fire. Gregor's toy, a wooden knight. Gregor never said a word, he just grabbed his brother by the scruff of his neck and shoved his face into the burning coals, held in there while the boy screamed while his face melted. There aren't very many people that know that story. I won't tell anyone, I promise. No, please don't. If the hound so much as heard you mention it, I'm afraid all the knights in King's Landing wouldn't be able to save you. She turned again to look at the hound and saw Asher passing him. Where's the prince going? Lord Baelish grinned. His Highness is jousting. She turned, stared. He's not going up against the mountain, is he? I don't think so, she sighed in relief. Asher didn't go against the mountain. Ser Gregor won enough to move to the next stage of the tourney. The prince first went up against Ser Percy George of Will from Dorne. The Dornish knight removed his helmet. Tally ho pip pip, and Bert's your uncle. Asher removed his as well. In the common tongue we say good afternoon. Might I also say may the best man win? Of course, your highness. They put their helmets and went to the ends. God's grief snorted. The trumpet sounded. The two raced towards each other. Asher lance hit the circular shield of the Dornish knight. It shattered. Ser Percy lost his balance and fell off. Sansa clasped her hands together. Asher continued to be among the four remaining. Ser Gregor, Ser Loras and his uncle Jaime remained, and the king said the three final jousts would take place the next day. Sansa entered her room with glee. Her fiancé made it through to be in the top four, but her thoughts turned sad as she wondered if he would face the mountain. Please gods keep him safe. The door opened and Asher walked in, followed by Gatsby. Sora flew to her desk as she ran up and embraced him. You were wonderful out there. Thank you, my dear. He wrapped his arms round her. I saw you look angry at the mountain. Was it because he killed Ser Hugh of the Vale? Partly. There's more to Ser Gregor than that. I feel sad that no one will remember Ser Hugh. I don't wish to speak ill of the dead, but Hugh wasn't really knight material. Father only knighted him in memory of Lord Arryn. Why don't you think he made a good knight? I only talked to him on occasion, but he was a bit rude and rather pompous, always stating he was the squire of the hand of the king, and soon to be the newest knight of the great house Arryn. Even though he didn't have any blood relation to Lord Arryn, he was a village boy who grew up in the shadow of the Eyrie, and only just older than me. Are knight really like that? A good number of them shine because they want people to think that. What did you think of his amour? I saw you looking at it. Who helped him put it on? It wasn't fastened right. Also, I wonder how he could afford amour like that after only 2 months. Someone had paid for it. Maybe Lord Arryn left him some money. Maybe, but to go up against the mountain so soon. How do knights choose to go against who? We draw straws, the ones with matching colors face against each other. But that makes me wonder who held straws they pulled. You think someone planned it? I've got suspicions. He was among the closest to Lord Arryn, and like I said, I don't believe late Lord of the Vale died naturally. Hugh could have been paid to administer a poison, which one I don't know, though I may have an idea, and then he could afford amour and be knighted. Only to die thanks to the monstrous Ser Gregor Clegane, a man so infamous for his brutality no one would really question it. Why is the mountain feared? Lord Baelish told me of how the hound got his scars. Sandor told me that story too when he was drunk. I asked why he was so deathly afraid of fire. It makes perfect sense, as to why Ser Gregor is so infamous. Sit down, it's a terrible tale. They did so, on the bed, and Sansa watched as Asher sighed, rubbing his hands over his face. During the sack of King's Landing, Ser Gregor went into the room in the holdfast that was the nursery of Prince Rhaegar's children, killed them brutally, then raped Princess Elia Martell before killing her as well. I get why my grandfather ordered the deaths of the remaining members of House Targaryen, but Ser Gregor should not have been the man to carry out that order. Sansa shed tears. Those poor children. Quite, they would have been my second cousin, one removed. But I get why they were killed. I don't think it right, but I understand. Would Aegon, Rhaegar's son, willing live under the reign of the man who killed his father? Perhaps if told of his grandfather's madness, but we'll never know. He sighed and looked to her. I need to get a book from you, father. I did plan to read it in my chambers, but if you like I can stay here. No, I'll go with you. I should get to know Maegor's holdfast. That's true, come on. They entered her father's office. He looked out toward the horizon before turning round to see the two. Asher spoke. Lord Eddard, are you finished reading that book? I am. Couldn't really find anything. Why? Well, I wanted to read it myself. He wrapped his arm around Sansa. I want to know what our children could look like. She smiled but blushed. Her father smiled. All right, but give it back to the Grand Maester when you're finished. Asher nodded and closed the book on the desk and took it under his arm. Then he circled his other arm around hers, and the two exited the room. In his chamber the pets went to their usual places. He let Sansa sit on the desk chair and he put the book down. She studied the cover, the lineages and histories of the great houses of the Seven Kingdoms. Asher nodded, with descriptions of many high lords and noble ladies and their children, and opened the book. Let's start with House Baratheon. He turned to his house and read. Each member, starting for Orys to the king, no matter who they married. Every storm lord carried the description, black of hair, blue of eyes, every child described as such as well. Expect Joffrey, Tommen and Myrcella. It wouldn't be such a problem if only King Robert married a Lannister, but no. 76 years prior to the royal wedding, Aegon Baratheon married a Tya Lannister and bared one child, a son, black of hair, blue of eyes, but who died in infancy. Sansa looked to Asher in confusion. How can your sibling be an exception to such a long line? I don't know, maybe it's something in the BLD of House Lannister of Casterly Rock. Tya could have been from Lannisport. Let's look at them. He turned to his maternal house. 30 years before the marriage of Gowen and Tya, Gerald Lannister, a lord of Casterly Rock, took as his second wife Angela Baratheon, youngest daughter of the then reigning Storm Lord. They raised 4 children, 3 daughters, 1 son, all black of hair, blue of eyes. Almost every other marriage of House Lannister happened between the main branch, like how Lord Tywin married his cousin, its cadet branches and the houses of the Westerlands. Asher blinked and paced the room. After a while he stopped, put his head in his hands before muttering, sometimes I'm too forgiving for my own good. What do you mean? Asher turned to Sansa. He explained what he saw that stormy night at the age of 8. She gasped, realization dawning on her. Should we tell father and the king? It'll sound to father as if I'm pleading for the throne, which I've never done, and I can't go against the words I said after the duel in Winterfell. Anyway, it would cause instability in the court. But you're the rightful heir. Yes, but with the machinations of mother she'll never allow it unless Joffrey died, and I will not commit kinslaying for the sake of proper inheritance. At least let's tell father. He could convince the king. Asher blinked, his eyes widened, and he swiftly held his out. No, it makes sense now. What? Grand Maester Pycelle said. John Arryn inquired about this book and began reading it the night he died. He told me he was researching something important. This must have been it. And when someone found out he was doing it, Sansa completed, someone had him killed. Probably mother. What do we do? We keep it secret, but I'll influence the small council to limit mother's power. When father passes away and Joffrey takes the throne, I'll do my best to limit his power. Grandfather ran the realm for 20 years under the Mad King. I could try the same with Joffrey. What about the book? Asher grinned. Right now we should continue with we started to do, let's look at House Stark, then House Tully, you do have your mother's looks, she smiled and nodded. Oddly House Stark only ever married House in the north, the Riverlands and occasionally the Vale. Though House Tully being known for fighting with marriages and forming alliances among so many house throughout the Seven Kingdoms, they found only one marriage to House Baratheon, as though Baratheon married an Andri Tully, their children all, black of hair, blue of eyes. Sansa smiled. The boys will be as handsome as Asher, I pray the girls have my face, with his hair and eyes they'll be so adorable. Asher turned back to those pages on the marriage of House Baratheon and noted on a piece of paper every detail before he closed the book. I think we'd better return it to your father, it might be possibly he wants to have a second look, she nodded. Once at the Tower of the Hand Asher gave the book back to Lord Stark. I think a more thorough look at it is in order Lord Eddard, he said before taking Sansa's hand and kissing it. Until tomorrow my dear. With that he walked away leaving Sansa in a state of utter happiness. She sat at the same place as before as the second day of the jousting began. 3 more and it would be finished. Asher rode to the royal stand and removed his helmet. The king smiled and nodded. Sansa looked to the other end as her betrothed's opponent rode in, the Knight of the Flowers. Ser Loras Tyrell rode in on a grey stallion handing roses to girls in the crowd. His didn't wear his helmet so Sansa saw his long flowing brown hair and golden eyes. He is appealing, she thought, but she turned to Asher, but how can he compete with the man I think prefect? Ser Loras stopped beside Asher and bowed. Asher chuckled, so it appears we have another go each other. Prepared to lose again your highness? My, you are confident Loras, good luck. And to you. Both rode to their respected ends, took their shields, Asher's with the crowned stag of House Baratheon and Ser Loras with the golden rose of House Tyrell. From behind her she heard Lord Baelish, 100 gold dragons on the prince. She turned round as Asher's uncle Renly Baratheon replied, I'll take that bet. Now what will I buy with 100 gold dragons? Lord Baelish gloated, 12 barrels of Dornish wine, or a girl from the pleasure houses of Lys. You could even buy a friend. Renly said. Baelish turned back smugly. The trumpet sounded and the two started. Neither landed a hit on first and second run, so the last go-around would be the last. The two charged, lances pointed. Closer and closer. Sansa held her breath. Asher moved his lance. It hit Loras's shield and shattered. The crowd cheered. Sansa jumped up and clasped her hands. Behind her Baelish laughed. The two meet in the middle and removed their helmets. Ser Loras smiled, so we're even now. It appears to be. Asher held his hand out, until next time. Of course your highness. Loras said taking the prince's hand and the two shook. Sansa smiled. Her happiness however quickly turned to worry as the mountain unhorsed Jaime Lannister, meaning Asher would face the brutal man he hated so much. Her father joined her for the joust. He looked around, where's Arya? At her art lesson, she said, not really focusing, don't let Ser Gregor kill him. Your betrothed rides well, he'll live. The black stallion of the mountain snorted and poured the ground. God's grief stood steady and stared strong into his older counterpart. Asher adjusted his shield and pushed his helmet down as far as it could go. The trumpet sounded and the mountain charged. Asher kicked God's grief and younger horse quickly caught up and accelerated. Both moved their lances. Asher's struck first, right on Ser Gregor's dogs and the mountain and his horse fell over. The crowd went silent for a moment. Suddenly the king laughed, that's my boy, and soon all were clapping and cheering. Ser Gregor got up, threw his helmet off and turned to his heralds. Sword, he called. He took the reins of his stallion as the squire quickly ran up with a two-handed broadsword. Ser Gregor took it and with one swing decapitated his horse. The crowd went silent. Asher turned round as the mountain swung and knocked him off God's grief. Sansa gasped as she stood. Ser Gregor took another swing, but Asher drew his Zanpakuto and blocked, before getting up. Ser Gregor tried again. Asher took a fast side sweep. The crash and then a ring sounded. Ser Gregor fell forward as Asher sliced his sword in half. The mountain turned as the prince returned his blade to its sheath. Clegane, the king called, "How dare you attack my son?" "Father, let him go," Asher said, removing his helmet. "He's an important member of grandfather's court, and unlike the infant Aegon Targaryen, I was able to fight Ser Gregor off." The mountain snarled and threw his cleaved sword to the ground before walking off. The king sat down. Sansa smiled weakly. Asher did win, but he let the mountain live, quite why she didn't understand. A herald walked up with a wreath of flowers and handed it to the prince. Asher turned to Sansa and walked up to her. "My lady, I name you the Queen of Love and Beauty for this tournament." She knelt and he placed the wreath on her head before taking her hand and kissing it. She smiled and embraced him. Being a ghost really sucked. Lyanna Stark traveled to the Wall to watch her son, as he became and served as a brother in black. Even from the start she hated what happened. In the camp the imp constantly called him Bstrd, true. Everyone apart from her brother, Prince Asher, and a select few knew the truth, but it did infuriate her. To combat her frustration she drew her nail down the dwarf's back, enjoying him stiffen slightly. Every now and then members of the Castamere squad would look at her, some would even speak with her in a private place, but in the company of another member to look as if they were having the conversation with each other should any non-Castamere person see them. Very smart way of covering up the fact they talked to something no one else could. This Lord Ichigo must have put some really thought into this. Once on the Wall she felt immensely proud as her son made easy winning from the other recruits. Then some of those recruits tried to threaten him. When the Lannister walked in she whispered in his ear, "Please save him." She knew he wouldn't hear her plea, but it appeared to work. His causal threats were boosted when a squad member walked in and did similar. Only when Tyrion mentioned the pasts of some of them did she understand. Later she followed her son up to the top of the Wall to find his uncle, her brother. Seeing the two hug each other made her smile. Then she looked out at the snowy wastes which lead to the land of always winter, from where, legend said, the White Walkers came from. She didn't know whether to believe in the stories of the Long Night or not. Most her life she thought the story to be just that, but now a ghost and told magic still lived in the world. It left her confused. "I wanted to be here," Ben-Jen said to her Oris, "when you saw it for the first time." He looked to his nephew with a face Lyanna knew meant trouble. "I'm leaving this morning," he said. "You leaving?" Oris asked. Ben-Jen nodded. "I'm the first ranger, my job is out there. There have been disturbing reports." "What kind of reports?" "The kind I don't want to believe." "I'm ready," the young dragon wolf said. Her eyes widened as he added, "I won't let you down. You're not going, you're no Ranger John. But I'm better than everyone. Better than no one." The first ranger turned to the recruit. "Here a man gets what he earns. When he earns it," he put his hand on the boy's shoulder, "we'll speak when I return." He walked as he passed her Lyanna said, "Come back safely little brother," and watch him walk to the lift down to Castle Black. She turned back to her son and saw his concerned face. Almost at the same time they turned again to look out at the freezing wastes. "Please come back safe." She watched her Oris begin advising his comrades. He fought with Gren, easily taking his practice sword and pulled a move that would have chopped the man's head off in a real fight. "Don't stand so still," he said, "it's harder to hit a moving target." He turned to Pyp, "Except for you, you move too much. I could just hold my sword out and let you do the work for me." He twirled Gren's sword and handed it back to him. She smiled. "He's so much like his father. I wonder what his musical taste is." If her Oris did listen to music, she never got to hear it. "Left foot forward." Her Oris said. Gren complied. "Good, now pivot as you deliver the slide, put all your weight behind it." Gren suddenly broke stance. "What in seven hells at that?" The Starks turned around as the Mstr of Arms Ser Alliser Thorne walked out with a fat young boy in training armor quickly plodding up behind. Pyp walked up. "They'll need an eighth hell to fit him in." Lyanna held her laughter. She knew better than to laugh at the overweight. Ser Alliser and the new boy stopped in front of the band of three. "Tell them your name," the Mstr of Arms said. "Samwell Tarley of Horn Hill." I was of Horn Hill. "I've come to take the black." "Come to take the black pudding," said Rast another recruit. Gren and Pyp laughed. Ser Alisar looked to Samwell, well you couldn't be worse than you look. He turned to Rast, right, see what he can do. Rast gave Sam a few hits and the Tarly fell down and raised his hand sobbing slightly, I yield, please no more. On your feet, Thorn said, pick up your sword. Samwell struggled to get up, Throne began to get impatient, hit him until he finds his feet. Rast continued the onslaught, Lyanna grimaced. It seems they've run short of poachers and thieves down south, Ser Alisar said, now they send us squealing bloody pigs. Her Oris took a step forward but PYP stopped him before Thorn ordered Rast to hit Samwell again, harder. That's enough. Her son said, he yielded. He gave the Tarly a hand up. Ser Alisar seemed amused, looks like the BSTRD's in love. Lyanna's face turned grim so she scraped a nail along his cheek. She grinned as he shivered then he spoke to her Oris, alright, let's make it an exercise. He gestured to Gren and PYP, you two. 3 of you ought to be sufficient to make Lady Piggy squeal. All you've got to do is get past Lord Snow. Her son looked at his 2 friends, you sure you want to do this? No. Gren said. Rast however charged, Oris punched him down, made swift work of his 2 friends. Rast tried again, but the dragon wolf kneed him in the stomach and kicked him down. Gren got up and Oris rushed to him, his friend held his hands up and called yield multiple times. Thorn seemed both impressed and unimpressed at the same time, we're done for the day. Go clean the armory, that's all you're good for. And he walked off. PYP picked himself up and turned to Gren, well fought. He joked. PSS off. His friend said, Lyanna chuckled before looking to her son as the Tarly asked, did he hurt you? I've had worse. You can call me Sam, if you want, my mother calls me Sam. It's not going to get any easier you know. You're going to have to defend yourself. Gren nodded before asked, why didn't you get up and fight? I wanted to, Sam said, I just couldn't. Why not? I'm a coward. Gren and PYP looked at each other. Gren shook his head. Lyanna tilted her head as Sam continued, my father always says so. War's not place for cowards. Her son said. Sam nodded. You're right, I'm sorry. I just wanted to thank you. The Tarly then picked up his sword and trudged back to the armory. Poor lad. Lyanna thought. Gren turned back to Oris and PYP, the bloody coward. There are people saw us talking to him, now they'll think we're cowards too. PYP quickly replied, you're too stupid to be a coward. You're too stupid to be a. Quick now. Before summer's over, Gren charged at his friend and the 2 ran off. Lyanna chuckled, oh, that reminds me so much of Brandon and Benjen. She sighed. Night came quickly. Lyanna leaned on the side of the ice wall as her son looked out at the wilderness. Footsteps sounded and both turned as Sam plodded up. Hello, Ser Alisar said, I'm to be your new watch partner. Oris turned his head as the Tarly continued, I should warn you I don't see all that well. Come stand by the fire. The dragon wolf looked back, it's warmer. Oh no, it alright, I'm fine. You're not, you're freezing. With that Samwell came closer, he peered over the side, I don't like high places. You can't fight, you can't see, you're afraid of heights and almost everything else probably. Oris looked to the Tarly, what are you doing here Sam? On the morning of my 18th name day my father came to me, you're almost a man, he said, but you're not worthy of my land and title, tomorrow you're going to take the black, forsake all claim to your inheritance and start north, if you do not he said, then we'll have a hunt, and somewhere in these woods your horse will stumble and you'll be thrown from your saddle to die or so I will tell your mother, nothing would please me more. Lyanna clenched her fist, that's horrible, a true-born son of one of a marquis house of the Reach treated worse than her son in Winterfell, even when being raised and treated as a BSTRD, if only I could. She sighed, she then heard something behind her, turning she caught a black figure disappearing before her eyes with a buzzing noise, she blinked. Sam's next comment brought her out of her bemused trance, Ser Alisar going to make me fight again tomorrow, isn't he? Yes he is, Sam groaned, I'm not going to get any better you know. Well, Oris said, you can't get any worse. The 2 shared the laugh. Lyanna smiled, my boys made more friends here in a few days than he ever did growing up in Winterfell. Next morning Orys and Sam went down to Castle Black. Sam went to get some sleep. Orys walked into the dining hall of Castle Black and sat on the table Gren and Pyp sat at. Lyanna leaned against the wall. Gren spoke first, his mouth half full, where have you been? Watch duty, with Sam. Prince Porkchop. Pyp said, where is he? He wasn't hungry. Impossible, the two laughed. That's enough. The dragon wolf snapped, he got his breakfast before he continued, Sam's no different than the rest of us, there was no place for him in the world so he's come here. You're not going to hurt him in the training yard anymore, never again no matter what Thorne says, he's our brother now and we're going to protect him, his mother nodded. You must be in love Lord Snow. Called Rast from behind Orys. The friends on the table laughed, he turned around and continued, you girls can do as you please, but if Thorne put me up against Lady Piggy, I'm going to slice me off a side of bacon. Lyanna gritted her teeth but her son simply ignored him. Until later. When the recruits slept, Orys, Gren and Pyp came and put a rag in Rast's mouth. Oyers's albino direwolf, Ghost stood on the bed and growled at the recruit. Orys spoke calmly, no one touches Sam, and Ghost barked fiercely. Lyanna watched and thought, which way is right? Protecting a friend or being trained as a brother of the Night's Watch? Next morning in the training ground Ser Alliser told Rast and Sam to fight, but neither attacked. What are you waiting for? The MSTR of Arms said. Sam thrusted his sword, Rast knocked it out the way. Sam went to pick it up. Attack him, Rast simply struck his practice sword on the Tarly's arms. Ser Alliser pulled Rast out and turned to Gren, you get in there. Gren did so getting into the stance Orys taught him, he leaned into Sam and whispered, hit me. Sam turned to Orys who nodded, Gren made a second encouragement, go on hit me. Sam more or less poked him in the shoulder and Gren fell down wailing and saying he yielded. Thorne gritted his teeth, walked up to Sam, pushed him out the way walked up to her son and took him by the collar of his armor, you think this is funny do you? He let go and addressed the entire group, when you out there, beyond the wall with the sun going down, do you want a man on your back? Or a sniveling boy? He walked away, the yard remained silent. Lyanna hugged the back of her boy, you had the best intention, do worry, it's just it won't do here. Ser Alliser made Orys and Sam clean the dining hall tables. Lyanna leaned against the wall. Sam spread the bone bust on the wood and scrubbed it in with his brush, I know for a fact that some of the officers go to that BRTHL in Mole Town. I wouldn't doubt it. Sam stopped brushing, well don't you think it's a little unfair? Making us take our vows while they sneak off for a little, Sally on the side. Sally on the side. It's silly isn't it? What we can't defend a wall unless we're celibate. It's abused. Lyanna nodded, does seem a bit odd. I didn't think you'd be so upset about it. Why not? Because I'm fat? No. But I like girls just as much as you do, they might not like me as much. He took his brush again, I've never been with one. You've probably had hundreds. No, Sam looked up and Orys stopped, as a matter of fact, the same as you. Sam laughed, I find that strong to believe. Came very close once, this took Sam and Lyanna's interest, both for different reasons, was in alone in room with a naked girl, but didn't know where to put it. I know where to put it. Was she old and ugly? Young and gorgeous. Aware named Rose, Lyanna rolled her eyes, that girl. Sam started to breath heavier, what color hair? Red. Oh I like red hair, and her. He put his hands to his chest. You don't want to know. That good? Better. Oh no. So why exactly did you not connect to Rose with the prefect? He stopped himself. What's my name? Jon Snow. Sam said. Lyanna sighed, Orys Targaryen. And why's my surname Snow? Because, you're a BSTRD from the north. I never met my mother, Tears started forming in Lyanna's eyes as her unknowing son continued, "My father wouldn't even tell me her name. I don't know if she's living or dead, I don't know if she's a noblewoman, or a fisherman's wife, or a where." So I sat there in the BRTHL as Rose took off her clothes, but I couldn't do it because all I could think was, what if I got her PRGNT? If she had a child, another BSTRD named Snow, it's not a good life for a child. He went back to scrubbing. Lyanna dried her tears. "Why, what does fate have against my boy?" Sam grinned. "So you didn't know where to put it." Oris chucked his brush at Sam and started to playfully hit him. At that moment Ser Alicer walked in. "Enjoying yourselves?" The two went back to brushing before he continued, "You look cold, boys." "Is a bit nippy," Sam said. "A bit nippy, yeah, by the fire, indoors, and still summer." "Do you boys even remember the last winter?" Both remained silent. "How long has it been now?" "What, 10 years?" "I remember," Oris said. "Was it uncomfortable in Winterfell? Were there days when you couldn't get warm? Never mind how many fires your servants built." "I build my own fires." "That's admirable." "I spent 6 months out there, beyond the wall during the last winter, supposed to be a 2-week mission. We heard a rumor Mance Raider was planning to attack Eastwatch. So we went out to look for some of his men. Capture them, gather some knowledge. The wildlings who fight for Mance Raider are strong men. Harder than you'll ever be. They know their country better than we do. They knew there was a storm coming in. So they hid in their caves and waited for it to pass. And we got caught in the open. Wind so strong it yanked 100-foot trees straight from the ground, roots and all. If you took your gloves off to find your PP to have a PSS, you lost a finger to the frost. And all in darkness. You don't know cold. Neither of you do. The horses died first. We didn't have enough to feed them, to keep them warm. Eating the horses was easy. But later when we started to fall, that wasn't easy. We should have had a couple of boys like you along, shouldn't we? Soft, fat boys like you. We'd have lasted a fortnight on you and still had bones left over for soup. Soon we'll have new recruits and you lot will be passed along to the Lord Commander for assignment and they will call you men of the Night's Watch, but you'd be fools to believe it. You are boys still. And come the winter you will die, like flies. With his lecture over he left. A few days after the two recruits stood atop the wall, Sam started complaining, "I miss girls, not even talking to them. I never talk to them, just looking at them, hearing them giggle." Lyanna saw her son's posture change. Sam didn't notice but both of them walked up to Oris. As she looked down trying to see what her son saw, the Tarly continued his talk, "Don't you miss girls?" Then he looked down, "Riders, the horn, we have to blow the horn." "Why's he alone?" Oris questioned as Sam remembered what they got told, 1 blast for a ranger returning, 2 for wildlings, and 3 for white walkers. "They're no rider," Oris said before running for the lift. Lyanna followed quickly as did Sam. At the bottom they found a black brother bring in the scared horse. As they neared Oris recognized it and Lyanna gasped, "That my Uncle Benjen's horse." The dragon wolf said, her turn to Lord Mormont, "Where's my uncle?" The commander remained silent. Lyanna started crying, another brother gone. She walked thought the gathered recruits in front of the Lord Commander whose voice filled the courtyard. "You came to use as outlaws, pouches, rapists, killers, thieves, you came alone in chains, without friends or honor, you came to us rich, you came to us poor, some of you bear the name of proud houses, some of you, BSTRD names or no names at all. It does not matter, all that is in the past, here, on the wall, we are all one house. Tonight at sunset." As the Lord Commander continued his speech Sam leaned to Oris, "You're allowed to look happy, going to be a ranger, isn't that what you always wanted?" "I want to find my uncle, I know he's alive out there." "I know he is. I wish I could help you, but I'm no ranger, it's the steward's life for me." "There's honor in being a steward." "Not much really, but there's food," both silently chuckled. Lord Mormont continued by say, here you begin anew. He walked down the steps from the lift and walked in front of the recruits. A man of the Night's Watch lives his life for the realm, not for a king, or a lord, or the honor of this house or that house, or for gold or for glory, or a woman's love, but for the realm and all the people in it. You've all learnt the words of the vow, think carefully before you say them. The penalty for desertion is death. He paused and looked around. Lyanna turned to her son, biting her lip. Mormont spoke once more, you can take your vows here tonight, at sunset. Do any of you still keep the old gods? Ori stood, I do, my lord. You want to take your vow before a here tree as your uncle did? Yes, my lord. You'll find a weirwood a mile north of the wall, and your old gods too maybe. Sam stood up too, my lord, might I go as well? Does House Tarly keep the old gods as well? No, my lord, I was named in the light of the seven as my father was and his father before him. From the steps Ser Alisar called down, why would you forsake the gods of your father and your house? The Night's Watch is my house now, and the seven have never answered my prayers, perhaps the old gods will. Lyanna smiled. Mormont nodded, as you wish lad. He returned to the recruits as Sam and Ori sat down. You've all been assigned an order according to our needs and your strengths. He opened a scroll to read it out. He called out names the Lyanna didn't care much for then. PYP to the stewards. Gren to the rangers, Samwell to the stewards. John to the stewards. Lyanna turned to her son as his face fell. Ori's turned to Thorn. She looked at the MSTR of arms who grinned smugly. After all the name were called out, each members of the orders went to their superiors. Maester Eamon addressed the new stewards. Samwell, you will assist me in the rookery and library. PYP, you will report to Bowen March in the kitchen. He gave the others their orders. Jon Snow, Lord Commander Mormont has requested you for his personal steward. Lyanna smiled widely. Oh Mormont, I know you'll treat my boy right. Her son however didn't think much of this great duty. Will I serve the Lord Commander's meals and fetch hot water for his bath? Certainly, the blind man said, and keep a fire burning in his chambers, change his sheets and blankets daily and do everything the Lord Commander requires of you. The boy trudged up, do you take me for a servant? We took you for a man of the Night's Watch, but perhaps we were wrong in that. May I go? As you wish. Oris turned and pushed Sam out the way, but Sam and PYP stopped him from going too far, only into a small storage room. John, wait, the Tarly called, don't you see what they're doing? I see Ser Alisar's revenge, that's all. He wanted it, he got it. Stewards are nothing but maids. I'm a better swordsman and rider than any of you. It's not fair. Fair. PYP said, I was singing for a marquis at Acorn Hall when he put his hand on my leg and he wanted to see my pages. Lyanna's nostrils flared as PYP continued, I pushed him away and he said he'd have my hand cut off for stealing their silver, so now I'm here. At the end of the world with no one to sing for but old men and little shits like you. I'll never see my family again, I'll never be inside a woman again. Don't tell me about fair. As Oris looked away in thought, Sam spoke up, I thought you were caught stealing a wheel of cheese for you starving sister. Who's going to tell a bunch of strangers how a marquis tried to grab my PP? PYP walked off to the kitchen. Sam turned back to Oris, now listen to me, the old man is the Lord Commander of the Night's Watch, you'll be with him day and night, yes you'll clean his clothes, but you'll also take his letters, attend him at meetings, squire for him in battle, you'll know everything. Be part of everything. And he asked for you himself, he wants to groom you for command. Oris looked away slightly. Lyanna wrapped her arms round him and hugged his back, don't worry sweetheart, you can trust Lord Mormont. Her son looked back to Sam, I always wanted to be a ranger. Sam shrugged, I always wanted to be a wizard. Oris laughed. Lyanna giggled herself. What? Sam asked, no I'm serious. So you'll stay and say your words with me? Oris looked at his friend. Lyanna whispered, it's alright, sometimes we don't get what we want, but many times what happens to you turns out for the better. As the evening came, Oris and Sam, followed by a few older members of the watch, and Lyanna along with Ghost went thought the tunnel under the wall and out into the snowy wilderness.
Lionel looked to the Zanpakuto the already sworn members wore. If anything happens, gods I hope they know how to use them. They reached the weirwood, a hollow wide-mouthed face carved in it with sap running like tears from its eyes. Both boys knelt and spoke to it. Hear my words and bear witness to my vow. Night gathers and now my watch begins, it shall not end until my death. I shall take no wife, hold no lands, father no children, I shall wear no crowns, and win no glory. I shall live and die at my post. I am the sword in the darkness, I am the watcher on the walls, and I am the shield that guards the realms of men. I pledge my life and my honor to the night's watch, for this night and all the nights to come. The leader of the group of watchers with them spoke, you knelt as boys, rise now as men of the night's watch. Ori stood perfectly, but Sam slipped on the ground until his friend helped him up. The two embraced as brothers, followed by the rest of their party, who congratulated them on a prefect vow. Lionel hugged her son from behind, I'm so proud of you, your father would be too. She felt him turn. She looked as Ghost trotted in with something in his mouth. The dire wolf put it down, a served human hand. The prince walked to the gatehouse in the Red Keep. Arya's Zanjutsu instructor would arrive via flash step. A few days ago he got back to King's Landing, and endured a fairly pointless small council meeting. Then in the evening he wrote a message to Lord Ichigo. The morning after he got up and read it through to see if it still made sense after a good night's sleep. He made a few changes, but once sure of it he called Sora over, tied the message to his leg and told him to go to Castamere and to return if not instructed otherwise. With his orders the raven flew off. And Asher went to get breakfast. This morning Sora returned with a message from Lord Ichigo saying he'd send the right person for the job. He passed through the gate, the city guardsmen stood to attention as he went by and walked out of their sight. Once in the street he wondered how many of the people out here worked for Varys, Baelish or his mother. He turned to a back alley out the way and with no one there to see him, flared his spirit energy. Within moments the buzz of a flash step sounded, and one of the last people he expected stood in front of him, Nap. He quickly embraced his friend, right person for the job. He laughed, why didn't he think of Sir Napier? Arya knew him from Winterfell and the King's Road. Let's find the samurai in training. The prince nodded and the two walked back to the castle. At the gate the city watchman stopped them, sorry your highness but we can't let this street beggar in. Beggar? Napier reaching for his sword, Asher stopped him, let me handle this. He turned to the two, this man is Sir Napier Waverley, he's a friend mine from Castamere, set here by the request of the hand of the King Lord Eddard Stark. The two gold cloaks looked at each other then stood aside. Nap gave them a glare. Asher found Arya wandering around the keep. Arya you're needed in the Tower of the Hand. Not Septa Mordain. I sick of needlework. Know something else, come on. Arya reluctantly followed the prince. When they walked into the main room she stopped, Sir Napier. Hello Arya. The lieutenant of Squad 6 said holding two wooden swords, both the same shape as a Zanpakuto. First off can I mention you're late, tomorrow I want you here when the bells ring midday. Why are you here? I'm here to train you in the art of the sword. He tossed one of the practice swords to her but she failed to catch it. Nap smiled, first time mistake, keep your eyes on the hilt, tomorrow I want you catching it, pick it up and we'll begin. Arya took hold of the handle and lifted it before taking it in both hands. Nap held out his hand, single-handed, less powerful strikes to start with, it not a great sword. It's too heavy. It's as heavy as it needs to be my pupil, you'll get stronger the more you use it. Napier then in a swift motion flipped his sword up and balanced it with the back of his hand on its center of gravity before flipping it back to grip by the hilt. First the stance, turn so the side with your sword hand, in your case the left faces me. She did so and the lieutenant studied her, you're quite thin, that's a good, mean when you dodge you're less likely to be hit, now let's see you grip. He inhaled and hummed, no, have the hand at the tsuba, a crossguard you'd call it. The knuckles should be in line with the front, the rest of your fingers rest firmly in the crook of your hands. The wrist needs to be in line with the blade, not to the side, that's very important. Soften the grip on the thumb and the forefinger,
the middle shouldn't be too tight or too slack and the last two should tight. That's a lot to think about. Why is the grip so complicated? Because the Zanpakuto is a part of you, an extension of your body, and the human is the most complex thing in nature, so Squad 12 tells us. From where his leaned on the archway Asher chuckled. Arya glanced at the prince before holding the sword out like this. Not quite, you're thinking the sword is a great lump of metal, a Zanpakuto is not, it needs to be handled delicately otherwise you'll never get the best out of it, it's a precision tool it's a needle. Ah, very good, keep that in mind. Now we study the art, this not the technique of a knight, random slashes and stabs to create abstraction, but a fine precise methodical slide with each attack to create the finest fights of all Westeros. Why do you use artist terms? My instructor was Captain Hugh Dean of Squad 9, he's a painter, come on, I'm your canvas, paint me into a pretty picture. He walked away, Arya charged he stepped to the side. She tried a side strike, he quickly dodged. The next strike she took at him Nap deflected the sword away and she lost her grip, too loose on the grip. He picked it up threw it to she caught it, he grinned, good catch. She charged going to his left, away from his sword, but he swung and placed his wooden blade on her now defenseless left, you'd be dead now, she tried another raising her sword up, but he attacked her waist, dead again. Asher chuckled and looked around to his side as Lord Eddard watched from the door to his office. Arya charged again, Napier dodged to the side grabbed her sword arm and brought his sword down touched the middle of her forehead, most sincerely dead. As they continued Asher looked to Lord Stark his face started to fall. A day later Asher got called to a small council meeting. He only just finished the bed for Lady and took it to Sansa's room in the Tower of the Hand. Finding her not there he wrote a letter and left it on the small makeup desk. On the way to the council chamber he ran into the fiancée discussing with Septa Mordain that possibly she would be RTH girl only. Asher told her his solution, which made her happy. As he continued to the council chamber with Gatsby and Sora he thought about the inheritance of the Iron Throne. He didn't think Joffrey would marry, one of the few candidates for a royal bride was Margaery. Tyrell, and with his mother's machinations of controlling the future king it would be unlikely she would let the power-hungry House Tyrell marry into the family, so the crown would pass to him on his twin's death. But then came the question Sansa asked, what if we only do have girls? Most nobles thought that, ever since the Great Council of 101 years after Aegon's landing, women could not inherit the throne, nor the male descendant of a woman born into the royal family, but no written confirmation of this unspoken rule existed, plus his own father happened to be the grandson of a Targaryen princess. Lionel Baratheon, the Lord of Storm's End during the reign of Aegon the Unlikely rebelled after being scorned by Aegon's eldest son, Duncan Targaryen, named after Ser Duncan the Tall, betrothed to one of Lionel's daughters. Prince Duncan broke the betroth having fallen in love with a small folk girl, Jenny of Oldstone. In order to marry Jenny, he relinquished all claims to the Iron Throne. Lionel became so enraged by this betrayal after serving and following Aegon's rule loyally he declared the Stormlands independent. Only after yielding to Ser Duncan in a trial by combat did the rebellion end. As restitution Aegon agreed to wed his daughter Rhae to Lionel, and out of the marriage came Asher's grandfather Steffan. Technically if the noble kept to this idea the throne should have gone to Aerys II's living son Viserys, but he and his sister Daenerys lived exiled in Essos and his father ruled as king. Also no evidence of a bad queen of the Seven Kingdoms existed, simply because the only queen, Rhaenyra Targaryen, eldest surviving child of Viserys I of his name, proved an unpopular heir with most nobles simply because of the unspoken rule, she never properly reigned, never given a chance to show how good or bad a ruler she would have been. Plus because of the Dance of the Dragons the only males of House Targaryen left were Rhaenyra's sons, Aegon III and Viserys II. Also written law said the king could name whoever he wants as heir. Ser Barristan mentioned Aerys II threatened to make Viserys his heir instead of Rhaegar, only tradition lead most kings to let their eldest son inherit after, and many times not doing so lead to rebellion. The Dance of the Dragons and the Blackfry rebellions sprung to mind instantly. If I do become king I'll mention these facts, while Asher respected tradition he definitely did not oppose change, not in the slightest, especially changes to a bad tradition. Sitting down on the king's chair he waited for everyone else. Eventually the other members arrived and they began the business of governing the kingdoms. After a few talks about this and that, like how Lord Baelish found a way to cover the cost of the tournament thanks to Asher's suggestions, the commander of the city watch Janos Slint came before them, a man Asher despised, to take bribes and selling positions and promotions within the city watch. Before he died, John Aaron tried to get Slint removed, however the king wouldn't allow it, saying the next man could be even worse. While Asher could understand the thought behind it, he could see more people worthy of command, just not allowed because of the commander's corruption. Apparently half the officers of the watch paid Slint part of their salaries, in some form of position protection racket. Slint stood before the council and told them of the current problems the watch faced. It's the Hands tournament that's causing this, my lords. The King's tournament. Lord Eddard stated, I assure you the Hand wants no part of it. Call it what you will, Lord Stark said. The city is packed with people and more flooding in every day. Last night we had a tavern riot, a BRTHL fire, 3 stabbings, and a drunken horse race down the street of Sister. Dreadful. Varys said, which Asher nodded to, however he noticed the slightly calm way he spoke. Did you have something to do with this, spider? Renly spoke next. If you can't keep the king's peace, perhaps the city watch should be commanded by someone who can. I thought exactly. Asher thought, though did not show it. Janos continued, I need more men. You'll get 50, Lord Eddard said. Lord Baelish will see it paid for. I will. You found money for a champion's purse, you'll find money to keep the peace. Littlefinger wrote it down in his ledge. Asher spoke next, I think Lord Baelish it would be wise to lower the tax on the tavern which had the riot and remove the BRTHL that had fire completely. It would be adding insult to injury at this point. As you say, your highness. Baelish wore a grin, but Asher spoke again, don't setting fires to your own brothels, causing Varys and Renly to snort. Lord Stark returned to Janos, also give you 20 of my household guard till the crowds have left. Thank you my lord Hand Sare, they'll be put to good use. The commander bowed and walked away. Lord Eddard took hold of his cup, the sooner this is over the better. The realm prospers from such event my lord, Varys said, they give the great a chance of glory, and the lowly a respite from their woes. Lord Baelish continued the thought, and every inn in the city is full, and the whores are walking bow-legged. I'm sure the tourney puts coins in many a pocket. Lord Eddard said, Asher finished with, just not the crowns. Now, the Hand said leaning back, if there's nothing else my lords. He got up and soon did the others. Renly simply walked off. Varys and Lord Baelish nodded before going. Asher helped Grand Maester Pycelle up before calling Sora to his arm. The aging man made slow progress walking. Oh this heat, on days like this I envy you northerners and your summer snows. Till tomorrow my lord. I've been hoping to talk to you about John Aaron. This caught the attention of the Grand Maester and the prince. Lord Aaron, the old man said, his death was a great sadness to all of us. I took personal charge of his care but I could not save him. His sickness struck him very strong and very fast. I saw him in my chambers just the night before he passed. Lord John often came to me for counsel. Why? The quiet wolf asked. I have been Grand Maester for many years. Kings and hands have come to me for advice since. What did John want, the night before he died? Lord Stark said, rephrasing his earlier question. Oh, he came inquiring after a book. A book? Both the Hand and the prince asked. I fear it would be of little interest to you my lord, a ponderous tome. No, the quiet wolf said, I'd like to read it. Asher nodded, is it alright if I join you as well my lord? So alright folks, that's all for today. Stay tuned for part 5. Do subscribe, like and share for more such videos. Also check out the story and author Magi tale Welkin on FANFICTIONnet. Press the bell icon to be notified first on release. See you in the next video. Till then, goodbye.